Yeah, I'll introduce you.
One quick question,
Yeah.
just so I know like a slight bit of background. Are you currently single or are you in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship?
No, I'm
Currently
currently
single. Okay,
single.
I just want
So,
context there.
and I'm on the dating apps and stuff. So
Excellent.
use it
Okay.
as you will.
Okay, cool. Cool.
All right. All right, here we go. Hey, you guys, this is your host, Andrea, with From Mrs. to Ms. We have someone very, very, very special in the house, all the way from Australia. I can't believe it. We have the incredible relationship coach, Mark Rosenfeld. Hi.
Hello, what an introduction. You have done that a few times before, haven't you? That was smooth as silk, that intro.
Smooth as silk. I gotta just go with the flow. I got more to tell about you. So, Mark Rosenfeld shares his journey from battling shyness to becoming Australia's leading dating coach for women. Starting his career teaching confidence in life and dating in 2009, Mark's experience as a professional stripper
Hello.
and
Hello. This just
hello
got interesting.
and interactions with over 50,000 women led him to found Make Him Yours in 2015. He used this platform to share what he learned to help women stop the frustrating patterns in their dating lives and start attracting the men they deserve. I'm already nodding my
Yeah.
head out
Yeah.
of frustration.
Oh, out of frustration.
Yes.
Okay. I was hoping it was out of excitement. It was out of
Well,
frustration.
that too.
Okay.
I mean, I've got like a stripper, I've got Australia, I've got talking men and
Good.
sex. I couldn't be happier right
G'day,
now.
guys. We're here to talk about Australia and sex. It's great to have you all here on the podcast.
Oh, the accent. Woo. Okay. All right. I got you. All right, Mark. So let's take it all the way back. We're going to go back to the beginning.
Love
Share
it.
your journey with me, how you transformed from this so-called timid, shy guy that you were to becoming Australia's foremost dating coach for women. What a
Yeah, it's
transformation.
it's it's 100% true. I promise. You can ask any of my high school friends and they'll back the story. So
Uh-huh.
I just had a lot of social anxiety going through school and a lot of shyness, and I kind of thought it would get better. And I was really excited to kind of graduate school. I very much got into gym and fitness. That was kind of my thing that gave me validation, made me feel good about myself. So that really helped.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought the whole shyness, anxiety thing would get a lot better come graduating school, moving into a share house, being around more people. Um, and it really didn't, interestingly. I kind of
Mm.
was that person who was sort of put myself in certain situations to try to make it better, but still managed to find my comfort zone within those situations. I'm like the woman who goes to speed dating and then there's not enough women, so she volunteers to be a man and doesn't actually meet any men. Just meets the women like, oh yeah, I went to speed dating. Sure. I was kind of in my
Oh, I
comfort
love
zone. I was a
it.
bit like that. So I was kind of not improving, and if anything, things were getting worse. I just had a
Mhm.
lot of anxiety around women. I couldn't
Mm.
meet them. I didn't know how to date them. I certainly didn't have the confidence to flirt with any, and it was starting to become it was having a really big impact on my
Yeah.
self-worth,
And
basically.
what
Because
age was this? Like what age
yeah, this
range?
was probably, we're getting into 17 to 20, that sort of age
Okay.
range.
Okay.
And then
Interesting.
when I turned about 21, I made a decision that I was going to essentially move in on college campus, and hopefully that would improve things because I'd be living with hundreds of women and men on college. And even
Yeah.
that, it didn't really help it
Hmm.
because I would avoid, again, the things that made me uncomfortable, I sort of would stay in my room or my apartment, and I'd meet a few. I guess it wasn't the worst decision, but it really wasn't helping the way I wanted it to. And I just knew I could do better. And as with many things in life, the pain grew large enough
Uh-huh.
that I was ready to take big action. It was sort of like that thorn in your shoe that finally added up. So I said to myself, it got to about November that year. I think I was turning 20, I was half 21 and a half, and it got to about November. And I said, I need to do something that's like drastic here,
Yeah.
cool, but drastic. And I decided basically that I had to go to the place that scared me the most
Mm-hmm.
and spend the most possible time there. And from there, if I could do that, then everything else would be a breeze. And I knew at the time, like the place that made me the most nervous was nightclubs. It was like being out around lots of
Ooh.
people, being in big social environments, having lots of chatter going on, loud noise, overstimulating. I thought if I can socialize there, then I'm
Yeah.
probably pretty good anywhere.
Yeah.
So long story short, my New Year's resolution that year, I actually just was accepted into veterinary school at that time.
Okay.
And,
Oh,
and
big
yeah,
difference. Okay.
exciting. And veterinary school is because I've been studying exercise science, and veterinary school is one of those things that's really hard to get in. But once you're
Okay.
in, it's really hard to get kicked out.
Oh,
And so So
And you
I was,
managed both, I'm assuming.
well, no, I didn't get kicked out actually, funnily enough,
Uh,
almost, but I was a pretty good student and I managed to get in just.
okay.
And then once I was in, I thought, great, now I'm in. I don't
Yeah.
really need to attend because it's hard to
Oh,
get kicked out. So I thought, gosh darn it, I'm going to use this year instead of going to vet school. I'll show up for exams, but I'm going to use most of the year just to work on my social skills.
wow.
And so I said, wouldn't it be cool if I could go out more nights than I stayed home? I'm like, that would be a lot of nights. Well, how many would that be? And I did the math and I realized that if I went out for 183 nights, that would mean I stayed home for 182 nights.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, that was
That
my
it sounds like most people's nightmare right now.
that was my nightmare, believe me.
Yeah.
It was a year of the first 3 to 6 months, especially, was just dread. Because
Hmm.
every second day it was like, oh, I've got to go out tonight. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I don't want to do
Yeah.
it. I hate it. I don't want to do it. But somehow stuck at it. And I think I got a little behind in parts of the year when there was a couple of exams. But long story short, I did go out 183 nights that year. I crossed them out on the calendar. And I didn't just go out, actually. I made myself a rule that I was not allowed to go home
Okay.
unless I'd talked to 8 to 12 groups of people or women,
Oh
like
my
strange
God.
groups.
This is quite like a
So
social experiment.
yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'd go out there and I just talk to people, and within half an hour, I'd already talked to 6 groups. And I'd be like, sweet, 2 more and I can go home. But sometimes on a weekend where the target would be 12, I'd
Yeah.
get out there, I'd not feel like doing it. I'd be in this club 2, 3 hours, haven't talked to anyone, or I've just talked to like a couple of friends maybe I went with that night.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's 2 a.m. I haven't talked to anyone. Like, rah! And then, I'd have a turbo moment and finally do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, long story short, that was my big social struggle and ultimately social success, was
Hmm.
learning how to meet people in those environments. And that those social skills, it took probably 50 nights before I started to be not awkward as a human.
Mm.
But after that, I started to get it. I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. You can talk to people. Some people think you're weird. Some people don't. Some people are open to strangers. Some people aren't. None of it really matters too much.
Yeah.
And especially once you've talked to one person, everything else just flows. So it was
Yeah.
basically a very introverted person teaching themselves an extroverted skill set.
Wow.
So I
So
did that.
can I pick
Yeah.
this apart for a
Yeah,
minute? So
please
this
go,
is very intriguing to me.
go for
So,
it.
okay, so you did nightclubs for the majority, or was it all nightclubs
It was
every
pretty
time?
much all nightclubs. There'd be a few bars, but it was generally nightclub time. So it was always after
Okay.
10 p.m. for the most
After
part.
10 p.m. And so would you sit there, like, was the anxiety just building inside you, like, oh, I know I got to go talk to them, I don't want to? Or I know you said after 50, but get into those first 50 where you like, okay, I
Uh,
just got to do it.
Yeah, sometimes it would. It sort of
Yeah.
depends. Usually, if you could do it, the best strategy was to say hi to a couple of people as soon as you entered the venue, and
Mm-hmm.
then the rest of it wasn't too bad. But there was absolutely nights where, especially if I'd be out with friends, I'd go, because I was sober. I should probably add, I didn't drink it during this experiment, so
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
would sometimes go out with the friends, and we'd sit down, grab a couple of waters or red cordials as we tend to do, and
Yeah.
I'd be sitting there chatting to them, and it was kind of a form of procrastination in a sense,
Yeah.
because yes, it was being social, but I was also sitting there comfortably. And then you'd get to 1 to 2 hours talking to your friends, and then the nerves would build up, then the anxiety would build up. And sometimes I'd need to change venues, or, walk to the bathroom and say hi to someone on the way back from the bathroom. Generally,
Yeah.
movement helped. Stagnation was made it harder. So if
Okay.
you can do it when you're moving, when you enter the venue, when you're moving around the venue,
Yeah.
it's much, much easier. As soon as you sit down and stagnate too much, that was when it
Yeah.
got a lot harder. Yeah.
And was this just women you were talking to, or men and women, just
I
anybody?
generally counted it as groups. So
Okay.
typically it was groups of women, but sometimes if there was a group of 2 men and 3 women, I would count that. Or if maybe sometimes even if I'd meet a couple, I would count that, because I didn't
Hmm.
necessarily, often they weren't a couple. You'd find out they're just friends who went out.
Yeah.
And actually those are the women that don't get hit on a lot, because it looks like they're with a man, but they're actually not. So
Yeah.
surprisingly, you meet some really interesting single people by
Yeah.
chatting to quote unquote couples. But generally speaking, I'd say 3/4 of the time it was groups of women between 2 and 7 in number.
Interesting. And how did they reciprocate? Were people weird about it? Were they like, hey, dude, you're
Oh, at first,
interrupting?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at
Yeah.
first, because I was so awkward, right? I didn't really
Yeah.
know how do you just approach people? And I had like these lines, which, like, yes, it's cringe to look back at it. And as
Hmm.
much as I'm like, oh, those lines were what gave me something to say. And even
Interesting.
if it was terrible, it's like I walked away so proud because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I opened my mouth and got rejected.
Yeah.
And so early in the experiment, like the first 50 days, it was just mostly rejection. It was mostly like awkward responses and stuff. But I still saw the wins and the growth because I was
Yeah.
talking. I was the part I could control was the opening of the mouth.
Hmm.
Everything beyond that was like, well, the universe, I can't control that. But the fear part, the opening the mouth part, the speaking to people part, that was 100% in my dominion. So I only really
Yeah.
validated myself off of that. And
Wow.
even though it really stung sometimes, there were some pretty bad rejections or people like looking at me funny or whatever it was. Didn't
Yeah.
happen that often, but it did. I always remember like the most courageous thing is the action. That's really all that matters to change your life. It's like if you go to the gym and have a crappy session, that's 10 times better than not going to the gym.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
it's kind of that mindset is like, I'm
Yeah.
showing up, I'm doing the thing. I did a little, journal, usually an audio journal of 1 to 2 minutes when I got home each night.
Hmm.
And despite the awkwardness, I guess I just had enough pain and enough
Yeah.
like focus to be like, oh, I'm still going to do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. So what was your turning point? Like 50, you said, was where you started being like, okay, I got this
Yeah,
now, or
yeah,
more?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was, but I would still say even after like over 100 nights, sometimes you're just not in a social mood, especially as an
Mm-mm.
introvert. You just go out like, I don't want to talk to people tonight.
Yeah.
And the first couple felt forced, and the people you were talking to could tell that you felt forced.
Yeah.
So they were like, why is this person talking to us? He doesn't even want to be talking to us. I was
Yeah.
like, here I am, we're doing this anyway. But after those first couple, you're in the flow. You
Okay.
get the momentum, you're in the social mood, and then after that, it flows fine. It's a bit like you've probably written books, filmed videos. It's like the first 10 minutes you sit down, you're like, sometimes I just don't want to do this today. But
Yeah.
then you get in the rhythm and you're flowing.
Yeah.
So I found socializing in that year a lot like that is even now, sometimes I'm just like, no, I don't want to socialize right now. I don't want to talk
Yeah.
to people. But after like 10 minutes of the party, I'm like right involved in it and I'm totally going with it. So
Wow.
it's a
This is
momentum
good.
thing. I think if you're extroverted,
Yeah.
especially if you're reasonably outgoing, yeah, I'm going to say the word. If you're reasonably outgoing extrovert, there are extroverts that are shyer. If you're reasonably
Yeah.
outgoing extrovert, you won't have to worry about this stuff. But if you're more of
Yeah.
an introvert, it usually is going to take you some energy and momentum to get that ball rolling. But
Yeah.
once it does, it's a great skill set to have, and it's so empowering because you can kind of be on your own or with people and feel really good either way.
Wow, what a great experiment. I love that. I love for the listeners to hear that because those that are thinking like, what can I do to get myself out there? That's huge just to kind of hear your story and go, I'm going to try that, see what
Yeah,
happens, you know?
it's hard. And to be honest, that isn't the exact process I use with women. It's
Yeah.
a little bit different with women, but certainly when I was coaching men, that was
Yeah.
a big part of it. And we really get the numbers in and help, especially for men, it's like getting those rejections under their belt.
Yeah. Because they need a few rejections.
Right. And it builds resilience. It's sort of because the cool part about rejection is when someone rejects you, there's no one left to validate you but yourself.
Yeah.
When your friends are all telling you that you're great, that's nice. We want that, especially from our parents. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, you've got to like take that and put it in your own backpack. You've got to take that
Mm-hmm.
validation and carry it around because at some point the world will tell you you suck.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's the real point where the universe is going to ask the question, what's in your backpack?
Yeah.
Have you got like a straw you can kind of suck validation out of when the world's telling you that you suck? And
Ah.
that's what rejection forces is when everyone thinks you're great, it's like you don't really get tested on that. It's like people are
Mm-hmm.
filling your backpack up. When you go and get rejected, now you don't have anyone filling the backpack up. So you've got to see how
Mm-hmm.
much did you store in there? And if it's
Mm-hmm.
reasonably empty, can you fill it yourself when you're getting rejected?
Wow. Great analogy.
And that's
Yeah.
that's when that muscle gets tested, is when you're getting rejected. That's when your internal validation muscles are getting a workout. That's
Yeah.
really the only time they get a workout is when
Wow.
you're getting rejected.
I love
So
that. So, at what point, or how do you think this doing what you did actually helped now with the success that you're having with working with women and all that stuff?
yeah, I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
led to everything. So I retired as a veterinarian in 2019, and I don't
Did
think
you
I.
ever go to class?
No,
Did
I
you-
went to class. Yeah, I think some of my vet college friends didn't appreciate my attendance record, but no, I definitely did. I did graduate. Like that was all
Okay.
good, and I worked a job for close to 6 years. So
Oh,
it became a once a week job for the last couple of years. But I,
okay.
I did a decent chunk of work as a vet.
All right.
How did it affect me? Well, it led to the whole business. The whole business
Yeah.
is a personal growth-based business. And so it really taught me that when we have struggle, whatever your struggle is, this is great for listeners as well. Whatever your struggle is your growth potential.
Mm.
It's not necessarily the amount you'll grow. You have to actualize it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to act on it, because there's plenty of people who have struggles and don't grow from them and stay the victim to it.
Yeah.
But whatever your struggle is right now, it's like the bigger your struggle, the bigger your growth potential, if you decide you want to tackle it and action on it. It could
Yeah.
take years, it took me a long time. But I think that's really powerful, because we often kind of lament our struggles. We think, if only my life didn't have this struggle, if only this wasn't here, if only I didn't have this problem of X, Y, Z, without
Yeah.
realizing that, like, every inspiring person the reason you know their name is
Mm-hmm.
because of their struggle, not despite their
Mm-hmm.
struggle, but because of their struggle. So Nelson Mandela,
Mm-hmm.
who's some other really inspiring, Oprah Winfrey,
Yes.
some are, even I think Richard Branson is one. Pretty much, there was another one I was thinking of. Oh, who's the gentleman that was in the Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps?
Oh.
These
Mm-hmm.
people are that way because they had struggles far greater than you or I,
Yeah.
and they chose to action through them. And now we all know
Mm.
their names. And it's like,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the concentration camp, no, neither of us would know who Viktor Frankl is.
Right.
So don't kind of lament your struggles. They do suck at the time, but
Yeah.
they hold your growth potential within them.
Absolutely. And they make you who you are and create your character and all of that stuff, right?
Right. They really do. They build character, they build
Mm-hmm.
resilience, and in the long term, they make you a better human. They're not
Mm-hmm.
fun at the time, and it doesn't mean they don't really suck at the time. I mean, it's going to really suck.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is, it's going to make you feel effing horrible.
Yeah.
But
Oh, you can say fuck.
I can swear on this. Okay, it's going to make you feel fucking horrible.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, once time has passed, you can look back on that and have it be the source of your strength.
Yeah.
And so that's where my business kind of came from.
Oh, okay. All right. So why do you think, like, understanding, men's dating behaviors deepened during your time as a professional stripper? I got to hear the stripper story.
I actually stripped
Before I go to
longer
the
than
question, tell me about the
Yeah.
stripper story.
Well, the stripper thing came because after about 2 years, 2.5 years of going out, it started to get a little bit old
Yeah.
and a little bit time intensive, to be honest. It's like,
Yeah.
I went, these clubs every night. And I just wanted a different route that was going to lead me to a different area of my discomfort zone,
Yeah.
and one where I could ideally still, be meeting women and have a social life. And I thought, what about like waitering or something like that, where I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
bachelorette parties or something? Because then I can, I've always been fit. Like, even when I was super shy, gym was kind of my outlet. It was the one thing
Yeah.
I could kind of do well. So I've always been reasonably fit, so that wasn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, okay, well, what if I can be at some of these events, maybe earn some cash on the side,
Mm-hmm.
goes to Australia as a 20-something, and
Mm-hmm.
also meet people.
Mm.
And that was, basically, long story short, got a job doing some waitering, topless waitering, bachelorette parties and stuff. And then I saw this guy, his name was Dave. And I actually, years and years after I met Dave, I got to perform alongside him on the same stage.
Uh-huh.
But he was at this place in Brisbane called Down Under Bar. I believe it still exists. It's a
Okay.
backpacker bar. It's a messy spot. It's a very messy spot. It used to be the Tuesday night venue I'd go to every week because there was nowhere else open, just backpacker bar.
Yeah.
But they'd have every Tuesday night at 11 p.m. they'd have this stripper, and sometimes the stripper was Dave, like once a week.
Okay.
And this stripper, he was just so. His show was so spectacular and
Yeah.
was so funny and was just so cool. And it was ironic because I'm like pushing the women out of the way to get to the front of this thing and watch it. And everyone must be looking at me like, this dude is so gay. Oh my gosh. And I was like,
so into
nah,
this
man,
guy.
this show is just awesome. I mean, this guy, Dave, he would run up the wall and
What?
land back on his feet. Like,
Wow. So
he'd
total
charge at the
performer.
wall and then run up and land back on his feet. And then he did, I forget the name of it, but he could do a backflip pivot, which is where you crouch down and you do a backflip, except you land facing the other direction.
Oh,
which
wow.
is, and this is not a guy who's 260 pounds of muscle. This is not a small human. So I just thought this is the best thing ever. And it was kind of funny because he probably wasn't the most popular stripper at the venue, but he was just so inspired. I just loved his show.
Yeah.
I loved his energy. I thought he was so funny on stage. And so I basically was able to, with my waitering, I started making some connections and just sort of put feelers out there. Hey, how would I get into this if I wanted to do it? Would you ever can I get a job from you? And I started putting feelers out there. And eventually I was on this boat and one guy said to me, like, he sort of gave me a chance and he said, look, man, I've got a show I don't really want to do in 3 weeks, to be honest. It's like 2 hour drive from here. It's a bachelorette party.
Uh-huh.
If you want to take it off my hands, swing me $50 from it or something, you can have the rest. And this is like a $500 job because of the huge
Wow.
drive out there.
So
So
were
I was
you
like,
like, fuck yeah? Or were you like, oh my God, no way, I'm too scared?
I was like,
Well,
fuck
too
yeah,
bad.
I'm fucking terrified. Holy shit, what have I done? And so I'm
Yeah.
like madly ordering stuff. Delivery times are slower back then. So I'm like, oh my God, what like costume am I going to do? And then he told me,
Wait, could
hey,
you
just,
dance? Could you
yeah,
dance? Okay.
yeah, like, okay. Yeah, not
Okay.
amazingly, but dancing, believe it or not, is not the biggest prerequisite for home parties.
Yeah.
They're a lot more interactive.
Oh, and you just gotta look good. Okay.
You've got to be fun and interesting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just looking good is fun for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Dancing is fun for like 5 minutes. But
Okay.
this was a 30-minute show.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is a long show and it was full nude.
What?
So it was like trial by fire at the start. It was pretty
I'm
wild.
dying,
Yeah.
y'all. You should see my face when he's saying this because I'm
It was
picturing it. Okay, go
it
on.
was full nude. It was 30 minutes. And so I was like, oh my God, this is the most intense thing I've ever done. Basically stopped going to school again for about 3 weeks there just to prep. And all right, I'm like, I need 15 2-minute songs. So I'm busily like figuring out every song, where to
Yeah.
cut it, figuring out which piece of costume to take off at each thing. I went through this thing so methodically that by the end of 3 weeks, I pretty much had it together. I went, believe it or not, the first costume I ever used was Zorro.
Oh no.
Zorro costume. It was. It
Oh
was
my
freaking,
God.
it's
How would
pretty
that
cringe
play out
looking back,
now?
but I'm proud of it. I'm
Yeah.
proud of it. That was my first costume.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, drove all the way out there. Stripping's always interesting because you arrive in this car and you can hear the party inside. And usually
Yeah.
you've been in silence for a couple of
Yeah.
hours. So you're sitting
Ah.
there just you're half asleep sometimes. You've had a long drive, you're kind of cruising up, a little bit of nerves. And then you
Yeah.
hear the party and the screaming and the yelling, and you're like, fuck me, I gotta be in the middle of that,
You
literally in
gotta
the middle
talk
of
to
that
yourself.
in
And
about 15
especially for
minutes.
someone who's more introverted, like you said, like that's even got to be an added layer. Like somebody extrovert
Right.
is like, hell yeah, party time,
Right.
but
And
no.
I'm like sitting happily in my quiet car,
Yeah.
and then you
Can
drive
I
up into the
just stay?
driveway. It's like boom, 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 screams, boom, 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 more screams.
Yeah.
Far out. But yeah, long story short, I did the job and it went
Mhm.
spectacularly. It was such a fun show. It went really
Wow.
well. The music worked. Everything
They
went great.
love
There was actually a
Zorro.
second show that night with Zorro. Yes, there was a second show
Uh-huh.
that night where it was I think it was a retirement party. Most of them
You're
were over
killing me.
65. Yeah, no, it might have been like a 65th birthday or a 60th birthday, I think it was. And those shows are always they're just
And
funny
that's a full
because
nude. Wait, full nude at a
no,
65? Okay.
that one was down to a G string, or a
Okay.
thong. I believe it's called a thong in this
Yeah, it
country.
is.
Is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
we
it's a
like a
thong.
good
That was
thong.
you like a good thong. Yeah. See, thongs where I come from are things you wear on your feet.
Okay. Yeah, we have thongs too. We have to get confused with
Yeah.
tongs because we have tongs and we have thongs. But a thong could be, yeah, like the little thing up your ass and the feet. I mean, not thing up your ass. Like, I mean, the part, the
Wait,
string.
what?
I'm just going
I
rogue
think
here.
I think it's flip flops is the thing that I'm
Flip
referring to.
flops.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. We do say that though. We do say
You,
thongs
you
for
guys do
flip
use that.
flops and for the little bikini underwear thing. That's also a
Yeah.
thong.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. We're on the same page.
But that was how the stripping career started. And I guess, yeah, your question was kind of what did I learn from doing that?
Yeah.
After doing that for a few years and bloody loving it, I got into stage. And so stage is where instead of doing, say, 2 to 4 bachelorette parties in a night, sometimes 5, you would just go on one stage and perform
Hmm.
with a group. So that's where there's more
Okay.
dancing, more
Like
performative
Chippendales,
aspects.
Men Down Under kind of
Exactly.
thing. Okay.
Exactly. So I was doing a lot of that.
Hmm.
Um, and from there, you'd have a lot more time. You weren't running around party to party every night. You would stop, you'd talk to a lot of the women. And I think I kind of saw all aspects because the group was really interesting and lots of men came and went as I was in it.
Yeah.
So there was guys who were, super duper players, just really want to get laid every single show, multiple times, sometimes from one show, just like that extreme end of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
then there was guys there that were in like happy relationships and
Yeah.
what I would consider really good relationships. There weren't a ton of those guys, but there were a few.
Hmm.
I went on and off. I had a girlfriend or two during my time stripping. And then I'd also talk a lot to the women.
Hmm.
after the shows. And I just found it so fascinating because I didn't mention this, but I was coaching men at that point since my nightclub days. I was kind
Okay.
of doing a bit of coaching work with men. And I just found it so interesting that so many women would get treated so differently. And
Yeah.
some women just would never have any issues. Men would respond to them really well. Men seem to always put them in the like girlfriend category or wife category. Or they always kind of got respect. And then other
Hmm.
women would just have this constant pattern of like, the guy always uses me.
Hmm.
Men don't really chase me. Like men don't come after me or flirt with me. And it was just interesting seeing how the trends were so kind of like specific between different women. And
Yeah.
I thought they must be doing certain things that are creating such different outcomes because none of them are prettier than each other, and none of them are like
Hmm.
bigger, smaller. There isn't any visual differences or anything I could notice. So obviously it's the way they're showing up that's
Yeah.
creating these vast differences in their relationships. And I just thought that was fascinating. And I ended up telling women about what I did with the men and scored a few clients out of that. And long story short, I transitioned to the business to women. I think it was in 2016, about
Mm.
2016, just working with women completely in the business.
Okay, so if I go back a little bit, so you mentioned,
Yeah.
so while you were doing the nightclub thing, you started coaching men. So
Right.
like just
Yeah.
kind of telling them what you were doing, how you were experimenting with talking to people. Is that kind of where you started?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest struggle with men is usually getting into conversations with women. It's like most guys are not
Yeah.
necessarily great, but they're a lot happier if they're meeting and talking. They feel like they have a chance once they're
Yeah.
talking to attractive women on a regular basis. It's a little different for women because that's kind of the easy part for women, but for men,
Yeah.
that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of men, they'd see me like talking to different people or, doing approaches, basically getting into conversations. And they're just, it started with them asking me for tips, like, hey, how'd you do that, man? Or, hey, like,
Mhm.
it helped me out. What was your process? And then after a while, I had a couple that would ask me, like, would you come out with me on a 6 times basis or something and actually help me consistently? Or kind of,
Oh,
would you
it's like that
push me?
movie with Ryan Gosling, isn't it
Exactly.
right? Where he kind of coaches
Exactly.
them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
it
like it.
became kind of like that, where I'd help them go out and meet women and
Yeah.
just chat. And again, a lot of it is just teaching them that one skill that it's focus only on the actions you can control and
Okay.
then let fate take care of the rest. So focus on opening your mouth basically and
Hmm.
being honest, being authentic with your interests.
Hmm.
Some will like you, some won't. But that if they like you, great. You got a woman who's into you. If they don't like you, great. Internal validation muscle practice challenge.
Mm.
So
Okay.
that was the idea behind it. Yeah, I never like did so much that I, spam the business all over the internet or did heaps of stuff. It was mostly local stuff,
Yeah.
but it was great. And I
Yeah.
had some really great clients and
That's awesome. And then
it's
you
super fun.
switched over to women.
And I switched over to women, yeah, which is obviously a little bit of a different market, different problems in that market, different struggles. But it's been very rewarding. And
Hmm.
I do work with couples a little bit now because when the woman comes to me, she meets a man.
Hmm.
Often we're doing, couples work where he comes in and does it. I don't work with men that often. I'm happy to, but I
Hmm.
generally more do it when a woman's referred and
Yeah.
someone has referred. I don't market to men, so I don't get that many of them.
Yeah. Was that a big transition for you to go from the men to the women? Like, was it a whole nother learning process or it just kind of made sense to you? It kind of clicked.
I started doing it because yeah, I had a few clients from meeting women at the shows, and then it sort of clicked that I can make video content around this. So I started putting out some videos, and the
Yeah.
videos were getting tons of views. So that
Yeah.
kind of encouraged me to go, oh, there's something here. I think people are actually really after this.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a lot of great videos on YouTube.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
went on and was
Thanks,
kind of
Michelle.
watching some of them. So that was
Thank
really
you.
fun and everybody can go check those out. But one thing that I was really intrigued by was a statement that you made. This was a really good one. You said relationships are built much more than they are found. And
Yes.
that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I was like, whoa. Yeah, I was like, that is so true. And we're always saying, I want to find love. I want to find the man of my dreams, all these things. But you're right. It's cultivating it and building it, right? So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, it's just, and this has also come from my own experience as well, building my own relationships, failing. I'm now married, so it's really been a journey for me, and I see the same journey in my clients. It's
Hmm.
like we get so focused on this idea of finding the perfect person,
Yeah.
and a big part of that is this Disney ideal that if we can just find that one person,
Our
if we can
prince.
just like, if we can just finally hit the right person, then all of that internal shame, those fears that we don't want to admit to,
Mm.
all of that doubt, finally we'll be free of that.
Yeah.
If we can just get the right person, damn it, finally we'll be free of that. And it's such a cool fantasy. I mean, isn't that great? Like, hell yeah, I want a magic wand that makes me
I
free of every
know.
inhuman form. Sounds bloody delightful.
Yeah.
And so what typically happens, unfortunately, is we have this myth promoted by Disney and promoted by matchmaking sites and this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And we think, all right, so I just got to find the right person. So we get really focused on finding them. And then a couple of things happen. First of all, we give fewer people chances
Yeah.
because we're so focused on, if this person doesn't make me feel absolutely perfect, they can't be the one.
Mhm.
I know the perfect feeling, and this isn't it.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the struggle. But then also, if you meet a person who makes you feel really amazing, eventually that's going to stop. And
Yeah.
eventually they can't heal that wound forever. It's like you think they can come in and like tick off that wound and make you feel better about it, but
Yeah.
eventually their perfectness devolves back into their human form, and sometimes they upset you, and sometimes they make you angry, and sometimes sometimes you get annoyed at them, and their
Mhm.
annoying, boring, not particularly attractive human traits come back, and suddenly they're not giving you the drug they used to give you. It would be like, I don't know if you've ever done drugs, probably not the best metaphor for the listeners, but it'd be like buying a bunch of cocaine and every week having this great cocaine experience, and then one week you snort it and it makes you like sick.
Yeah.
And you're going, what did I buy? This isn't what I buy. Give me my money back, man, you
Yeah.
terrible dealer. But it's like, when we have that idea that the person's going to come in and fix all my problems if I can just find the right person, then
Mhm.
we want our money back
Yes.
once they stop doing it. And we're like, get out of here. I'll find the person who is better than you. So
Yeah.
this is why I always say, like, chemistry at level 9 or 10 out of 10 is really dangerous, because the come down is so great that
Yep.
very few couples survive it. So
Interesting.
6 to 8 is your Goldilocks zone, because
Yeah.
then you're not on such a high that you're going to crash with someone who's between a
Yeah.
6 and an 8 on chemistry. 9 and 10
Wow.
is wicked dangerous, and
Yeah.
usually a sign of a wound mate, especially a 10 is almost always a wound mate. I I got totally obsessed. I was 26, I think, and
Uh-huh.
I met this woman out stripping. She came to one of the shows. I just thought I was just enamored by her. I thought she was amazing.
Mhm.
We were intimate. We went on some dates, and like I can remember almost every detail of every date years and years later, because I was just so
Wow.
enamored with this woman. I just thought she was
Yeah.
just amazing. Of course, it didn't work out, as those intense chemistry ones never do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it devolved. I was getting more and more anxious dating her, which was really interesting. And then eventually I had to like let her go, because
Oh.
she was she was hot and cold, and it was like driving me insane. And after a couple of months of this, I was like, this woman is making me an anxious mess. Like, what? I'm checking
Wow.
my phone every 10 minutes. Like, I don't do that. And with her, I'm like
Isn't that
freaking
wild?
obsessed.
It's so wild to
Yeah.
me how there's certain people that you just kind of have that with. And I find that all the time. Like there's some, and I've kind of chalked it up to being like, yeah, if I'm not feeling that anxiety after, that's not my person. And it's probably a lot of what you're saying, because
This,
I'm looking for that person that I can't stop thinking about, that when they text, I'm like, oh,
yeah, they're always poisonous, man. They always I mean, this girl for me, in the end, as it came out, it took me a long time to get over this girl, like a long time.
Oh,
Probably longer than any girlfriend I've had, to be honest. We only dated for a few
wow.
months. And yeah, she was ticking a wound. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize that she came into my life. She was addressing a wound from high school that I didn't even realize I had, about
Yeah.
loneliness and validation. And she was the girl. I obviously didn't know this at the time, but looking back about a year or two later, I was like, oh, she was the epitome of the girl that I always wanted to date in high school. Like
Wow.
she just came in and she fitted that wound like a
So
puzzle.
it was like your Disney movie
It
that
was
came to
like my
life.
Disney. I was
Yeah.
like, man, this is the one. This is it.
Yeah.
I just knew. And yeah, she was totally emotionally unavailable, and I probably was. I'm guessing too. I thought I was open, but she
Yeah.
definitely was. She was definitely the one who rejected me. It wasn't the other way around.
Wow. But that's also a big thing, I think, when you're saying about the chemistry, is we tend to then, we totally are blind to the red flags, right? Like somebody's
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
emotionally unavailable, and we're like, but they are hot as fuck.
Yeah,
So I'm in.
but when she was with me on that date, man, the way she touched me, she's definitely the one. Like, I just know it. So yeah,
Yeah.
the finding thing is just look, you do have to find a decent person, but
Yeah.
look at you and me. I mean, the listeners, we're good
Yeah.
people. We're
Yeah.
not perfect. We
Yeah.
kind of suck sometimes in certain
Sure.
ways.
Yeah.
We have our faults, And so
Speak
that's
for
kind of,
yourself, Mark. Speak for
speak for
yourself.
yourself. I have no faults. Thank you very much. But this is the thing is like, that's humanness. Those faults, as I was saying earlier, the struggles in your life are what make you great. And so the struggles in your relationship are what makes your relationship great.
Yeah.
So it's having faults, ironically, that forces you guys to work on stuff. It makes the relationship shitty for a short period of time. And because of that, it creates the glue that keeps you together. Like a simple example, I always wanted to date a woman who was Aussie, essentially. I had no intention of dating overseas. That wasn't my plan. I have ended up marrying a woman from the other side of the earth. That was, you'd look at that on paper and say, you guys are so incompatible. And her and I did look at it on paper for a long time and say, you and I are so incompatible, we shouldn't do this. But we realized we'd found a decent enough person. We're not perfect. We go sucking around nose, but we found someone who was pretty good.
Yeah.
And that pretty good plus working through the shitty parts is really how you build the relationship. It's like you won't find the perfect person. They shouldn't make you feel like a 10. If they do, they're probably a wound mate. So when you find like a good, healthy person who has like a 7 or a 7.5 on attraction, if you can take that person who wants to make the choice to build with you and they build with you as well, now we have glue. It's like now the problems become our power. And that's why I mean, you build it, you don't find it. The real thing that keeps us together is not that like I found a good person. Like Sam is amazing, but there's lots of amazing women. They're kind of everywhere. There's lots of good ones, and there's lots of healthy ones out there as well. There's a lot of them. But if I was to, for example, cheat on her or leave her or blah, 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 I'm now burning, by taking that action, I'd be burning all the hard work that we've both put in.
Wow.
So we have a lot of skin in the game because of all the building we've done. And it's the building and the skin in the game that is the real glue. Without that building, if you just find a nice person and live in happy land, it's very fragile because as soon as life throws a boulder at you, you break.
Yeah.
So Sam and I have built something, so we're not going to break. But she was not like the most, I mean, she will say the same thing. We have this conversation. We are not the most exciting person each other's met. We were attractive. We both like, yeah, you were cool. You were definitely attractive to me, but you were not like the woman I talked about. And she was like, you weren't at James. you weren't James. You weren't like
we all have that
James.
one person, right?
So I think that's what I mean with building. It's actually the problems that give you the glue, which ultimately creates the
dynamic.
Foundation.
And I think that's really, really, really cool to hear, actually, because we always look for the easy way out. We're looking for the guy that's like, oh, well, we have chemistry and he's hot, and of course this should work, right? We're going to live happily ever after. But it's putting in those extra efforts and the steps and all the things beneath and finding that compatibility, really, right? That's going to sustain
compatibility and relationship skills, because you can be quite compatible with a raging narcissist. You can both want the same number of kids. You can both live in the same area. You can both have a nice enough family. You can both do the same religion. You can have the same interests over hockey or table tennis or whatever is your interest. So you can actually be quite compatible with someone who has zero relationship skills. And I always say to my clients, you never measure a relationship by the mountains, you measure it by the valleys. Because you can look at the most toxic couple in the world and be bloody jealous of them on Instagram on a good day. They'll look great. They'll be happy. They'll be fantastic. But it's the valleys, it's the conflict days that separate the healthy from the toxic. And so really, if we're really seeking and fishing for a good relationship in the pond, if we're filtering for someone amazing, we need to see how that person behaves, treats us, shows up when they're stressed, tired, or triggered, i.e. on their worst days.
Absolutely. And
that's
not
why chemistry
ignore the
is
red flags.
Chemistry is very misleading, and even compatibility can be misleading because it doesn't necessarily speak to how they're going to do conflict with you.
So you got to go deeper, really.
And have more healthy conflict right throughout the process. That's something I talk to clients about a lot, because the more you establish like good conflict habits where you're both speaking a lot and respecting, listening to each other's views, not just being like, la-di-da, happy days, but getting into some of that conflict early on in a healthy and open-hearted way, the more you see, it's like poking something to see if it breaks. The more you poke it, and you don't have to make stuff up, life will naturally poke it. Your standards will naturally poke it as long as you speak to them.
But don't sweep it under the rug, actually Attack
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speak
Yeah.
to it. I don't know. Yeah. Attack it, I suppose, sounds a little,
I
sounds a
got a
little
little
aggressive.
aggressive
Let's
there.
attack it. I'm attacking
Yeah.
that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Address
Andrea.
it. Address it. Assert it,
Address
actually.
it. We'll be
I
a
like the
little
word assert.
softer here. Got me
Assert,
all
yeah.
worked up with the stripping.
Getting excited. I get it. I get it. For reference, I switched to a Game of Thrones costume for a while. Did a lot of Jon Snow.
Oh, you did?
I did a
Oh,
lot of yeah, I got the hair down. I did a lot of police
yes.
officer, and I did a lot
Yes.
of no, sorry, I did almost did some Witcher towards the end of my career. I was actually
You,
planning a Severus Snape outfit,
oh my gosh.
which would have been different. But
That is so funny.
yeah,
Jon Snow, quite the character. You need to give us a little winter's coming. Well, I don't know how to say it.
I'll go get the
Your
fur
good
jacket. Just
accent. Yeah,
I had the
good.
best fur jacket. It was so good.
Winter's coming. Oh my gosh. So what are some of like the primary differences for you between teaching men and women? Like what did you find were things that just completely stood out like, whoa, that's different than what I was doing before? Anything
Yeah,
specific?
there's a few things. I think with men, it's really about numbers and repetition at the start of the process.
Mm,
So, and men typically have a scarcity issue, which is they just don't have enough women to choose from. Usually
yeah.
they don't have enough women because in a lot of their life they suck.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the truth. Like
Yeah.
maybe they're not taking care of their health. They're not facing their fears in their business or in their work.
Yeah.
They haven't saved any money for themselves. They don't really have a lot of stuff going on or future
Yeah.
plans, whatever it is. They're not particularly inspiring. So a big part of that is building their life and
Yeah.
getting them through their fears in their personal life. And usually if a man is fit, decently successful, or even if not successful yet, reasonably dedicated and working hard on his goals. If he's fit, working hard on his goals, is able to talk, has some level of charisma. Most guys, if they talk to women, will have some success.
Hmm.
So
Do most go out of their league or their lane? I should say, like, is that how we kind of approach it a lot of times, whether it's men or women? Is it our first thought to go, okay, that guy's really hot. I'm going to go for this 8 or 9 if you're maybe a 5 or 6 or
no,
something.
not in my experience.
No, they
No,
kind of stay in their
not
lane.
unless you're alcoholed up, drugged up.
Yeah,
No, when humans are surprisingly similar when we're sober, surprisingly, we stay in our league
we're
a
realistic.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's
interestingly,
probably the fear too, right? Because if you're a little intimidated by it, you're going to stay like, no, this
Mm,
girl's more my pace over here.
for
Okay.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And that was one of the things I did with guys is women, when they go out, especially in a club environment,
Mhm.
can be quite intimidating. It's not like chatting to someone at the grocery store or a library. It's like she's very dolled up, she's very
Mhm.
attractive, she is kind of intimidating. And then there's the sense of obviously if you go talk to her and get rejected, the 4 other people around her also laugh at you. So that's really scary too. So
Oh, that's
um,
terrible.
part of the struggle for men is getting over that fear and realizing, okay, I can approach someone who I might not have considered, quote unquote, in my league, or who I might be a bit intimidated by.
Yeah.
So it's definitely scarier,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say it comes naturally. You kind of have to push guys to do that. Typically men will go, like, men will only go, if you just leave them alone, men will only go where they're pretty confident they can be successful.
Mm.
And so it's actually quite rare to see that in a nightclub environment because women don't give many signals in a nightclub environment
Yeah.
unless you're the one guy that they happen to have spotted in the whole crowd that they like.
Yeah.
So a lot of men are kind of waiting for the eye contact, the signals, which isn't a bad thing. Women do most of the initiating when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to courtship. So
Mm.
because of that, a lot of guys are waiting, they're waiting, but 90% of guys aren't getting any signals because the women are generally just noticing like the 10% most attractive guys in the room, and those 10% are getting most of the signals. So the 90% of guys might be decent guys, but they're not necessarily getting the immediate signals.
Yeah.
And so, especially in like a bar or club environment that I was working in, you'd have to get the guy usually to start the conversation. And
Yeah.
once he starts, the woman's like, some of the time, sometimes you get straight up rejected, but a lot of other times, if he's a decent guy with his stuff together,
Yeah.
once he's in the conversation, he realizes, oh, she's not that scary. She's just a normal person, and I can connect with her on whatever
Oh,
hobbies.
I love that.
So that's why sometimes you have to kind of push them to get started, especially at the start of the night. But
Yeah.
once the momentum's rolling, they're like, oh yeah, these women aren't that scary. I'm being the social butterfly tonight, and I've met some friends, and yeah,
Yeah. And then they
it
feel
builds. Does that make
good.
sense?
Yeah. No, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. I just kind of wondered what that's like. I mean, I know how it was, growing up and going out to clubs and stuff, and
Yeah.
I just always thought like, because women get just as intimidated, to go up and talk to a guy and start that up. So I just didn't know if it was kind of the same
Yeah.
thing or they tend to kind of go out
I
of their lane.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of that with women because if we want to be super general, when it comes to sex, women have options and men don't.
Yeah.
Now, I know that's a gross generalization because some men are players and have tons of options, but in my experience, even men who are players, they're often operating out of scarcity. They're
Hmm.
just very good at operating out of scarcity. So they've got
Yeah.
like a girl every second night, but they still feel like they're going to run out of women. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny. Whereas
Wow.
women may not have many sex partners at all, but like they could have tons if they
Yeah.
wanted. So they're in this kind of abundance, even though they're not having sex, while a man can be in scarcity and having a lot of sex.
Wow.
Um, where was I going with that?
I know, hold tight
Abundance,
because I just want
scarcity.
to
What
fix
was
my
your
lighting
question?
here. Hold on,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna fix my lighting here real quick. It's driving me nuts that I have so much light on my face. Okay. Okay.
What did you ask about there? You asked
I think
about
I asked
how it's different from
the
women.
primary differences. Yeah. Wait, is that better?
Yeah, so
That's fair.
all this is to say women generally have options.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I totally get listeners might be thinking, no, Mark, I don't have any options. I'm not meeting any good men. Like, I get it, but that's because you're not allowing those options in. Like I could put you on an app and get you 20 options in like half an hour. Now you might say,
Mm-hmm.
well, they're bad options or whatever. And I get that. Okay. There might not be any options you want, but you can still get options.
Yeah.
So a lot of what women do is you don't want to make yourself too approachable because you could have too many options.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if you set up a nice dating profile? Usually you have like 100 options within like a couple of hours and you're totally overwhelmed. You're like, I'm never going on the apps again. This is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work with women is not about necessarily meeting more people or more of the opposite gender like I would with men. Because there it's
Okay.
more like I'm in scarcity. I just need to get my life together and get some options.
Yeah.
With women, you still got to get their life together. That background stuff of self-improvement always applies no matter what your sex is. But
Mm-hmm.
generally with women, it's more a case of opening them up to the right guys
Mm-hmm.
and allowing them to not be overwhelmed by the inevitable flow, which you'll get because you can't just kind of open yourself up to only the perfect man. Like that doesn't work. You have
Right.
to open up to a
Multiple.
little more than that and then
Mm-hmm.
be comfortable filtering. And the real skill is like the filtering and doing it
Mm-hmm.
right. Because if you filter too soon, you shut everyone out.
I do
Essentially, your
that.
heart is closed. Yeah, you can relate to that. But a lot of women have also not filtered enough. And
Yeah.
then they get overwhelmed by, oh, I've got all these men who have all these expectations of me. I don't want to let them down. Oh, I feel like a bad person. I'm really
Yeah.
overwhelmed, like rejecting them. I feel really bad. I'm just going to talk to no one. And then they log off the app and don't date for 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's like that boundary flow of the like turning the filters on and off at the right times is the most difficult challenge for women.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clients might struggle with guilt around doing that. I was just chatting to a client before I came on this call. She's like, I just feel bad. Like when I'm dating, I start feeling like I'm failing the men, like I'm failing myself. I'm not giving enough attention to people. I'm not sure if I'm keeping the right people in. I don't know if I'm giving people too much chances or not enough chances.
Mm.
And she's just like, it's just that overwhelm of like,
Yeah.
am I doing this right? Is this right? There's that risk of failure for women, but it's a different skill set.
Okay.
Because women have so many options, if they truly open themselves up, they have to shut themselves down to an extent. No
Yeah.
woman's going to walk around the nightclub like giving eyes to every guy in there because then every guy's talking to her and she's
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's like you need to be open enough that you can get some guys into your funnel. You can't generally just have the ones you want, but
Mm-hmm.
then you need to not feel too bad about slowly ruling the ones out that you don't want, while also not ruling out potentially good guys like a 7 out of 10 who's actually a really great guy. You don't want
Yeah.
to rule him out too soon. So you need to be open enough to let the
Oof.
6s, 7s, and 8s in, but closed enough to not have like people really overstepping you or using you or kind of taking up too
Yeah.
much of your bandwidth. It's a real mental boundaries skill set.
There's a lot to think about during that time, and you're really narrowing it down to certain things. And I try different things all the time. So, I'm on the dating sites, I were kind of talking about this a little bit in the beginning, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah, I do get a lot of swipes, but for me, I'm like I could swipe on 50 left to get one right, but I do have my, my filter set to like a certain height that I like, and I want them to be in a certain age range, and I don't want them to do the,
This is,
and then I'm going, wait, there's nobody left.
can I coach a little bit here? Would you be able to do
Yeah,
some coaching?
please, please.
So you and I both know that you would never walk into a room and apply the philosophy you just applied.
I
Like
don't think I
imagine you
would.
and I
You're
go, I'm like,
right.
hey, let's go out. I'm going to coach you here. I've organized 50 men for you to
Yeah.
meet. First of all, you'd be like, 50? Fucking 50? I'm going, I can't do, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You want to leave. So the only way for your brain to kind of handle that is to go, okay, well, 50, I got to narrow it down. And the decision matrix of considering all these guys is so complicated and overwhelming. Remember, most prehistoric women, as in our
Mhm.
ancestors, didn't even have 50 men to choose from their entire lives. They probably had 20 in a typical
Yeah.
tribe. That was about the breeding pool.
Yeah.
So 50 in
Wow.
a night is so unbelievably, stupidly overwhelming.
Yeah.
And none of our brains were built for it. That naturally we do the only thing that we can, which is we pick the most superficial things and we have to filter on those. So we go, okay, I got 50 guys. I need anyone who's under 6 foot to get out of the room.
Yeah.
Okay, I've still got like 12 left. Can we get anyone who's like, I don't know, who doesn't dress perfectly that catches my eye to get out? Now we've got
Yeah.
6 left. Can we get anyone who doesn't? And you pick the next superficial thing and you got your favorite 3.
Yeah.
The problem is, of the 47 men that left, that's probably where the good ones were, and you've got the
Yeah.
players left in the room. Like, let's say you meet a man at a party and he's got like a weird eyebrow,
Yeah.
you know,
A unibrow?
yeah, he's got like a unibrow, like a light unibrow or something. It's like you notice it, but
Yeah.
you're already at the party and you already talked to him for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So there's this thing where you meet a human being in person and you're kind of forced to overlook the negativity because of social norms.
Okay.
Like if I sit down with a woman at speed dating and she's got like a funky eye, it's
Hmm.
like, whatever, I'll talk to her for a few minutes. And occasionally you find out she's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But that fucking eye. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
But maybe I'm not perfect either. Like, what if I
Yeah.
have a weird OCD clean habit that's like as annoying as her eye is?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you meet people in person, you're much more likely to overlook little superficial negative things.
Mm.
And that means that you naturally give people more of a chance. It's more like a social thing. Because
But
if
how
you've
do
known
we,
me, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you've known me for 3 minutes, now you've gotten a feel for me beyond
Yeah.
my funky eye or whatever it is. And I can't tell you how many women it's like, I meet the most beautiful woman in the room
Hmm.
and I realize like very quickly, I don't want to date her. She's
Mm.
not interesting. She doesn't have any depth or
Yeah.
character, or she doesn't have anything interesting to talk about. And then there's a woman there that definitely wouldn't have been, she might be like the 5th most attractive woman in a room of 15.
Yeah.
But I talked to her, I'm like, oh man, you're way more attractive than I thought you'd be. Holy cow. Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't jump out at me, but man, you are fascinating.
And they become more attractive the more you're talking and the more
Right.
things you have in common. And
Right.
yeah.
And the hard part is if we take an online mentality, because I'm so overwhelmed by like I have too many matches, I probably
Hmm.
just would have swiped left on her and never met her.
Oh, that's such a sad story. It is kind of
But
sad, right? Because you're missing out on all these incredible people because we are so caught up with how everybody looks in the first, but in all fairness, that's all we really see on the dating sites. That's what your first
exactly.
impression of it, right?
Exactly. And this is why I like dating sites because they solve one of the problems I don't solve for my clients, which is men. I'm not a matchmaker. I don't really believe in matchmaking. I think it's a bit of a skip.
Hmm.
And I hear it not working a lot.
Hmm.
But it also means I don't have like a handy pool of men just like sitting in my back door to give the backyard to give to clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, there's an infinite pool on the apps.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of men. They're all there. And I personally always abide by the belief that at the end of the day, 8 out of 10 people are good people.
Mm.
I just
Yeah.
believe that in my bones, like soul. If I ever in doubt about that, I just always go back to that. So if I know it to be true, that there's basically infinite men out there, and we also know it to be true that 8 out of 10 people are good people,
Hmm.
then all I've got to do is help my clients solve the problem of the overwhelm that I was talking about earlier. How do I help them filter in a way that they can kind of enjoy, that they can stick at, and that will allow the best guys to come through without my clients, wanting to quit, getting discouraged, ruling out guys that are potentially good guys. Like how do I solve the problem of the apps and the shitty brain habits that they cause, and
Mm-hmm.
simply allow my clients to connect through the apps to the men on the other end. And that's pretty much my job as a coach. I do a lot of offline as well, but now being
Yeah.
more international, I do a fair bit of online.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the apps. I'm happy if someone doesn't want to do apps, great,
Yeah.
fantastic. But if you need to use the apps, I've seen so many women succeed on them, had so many clients succeed on them,
Yeah.
but most people hate them. And so I know that it's possible, and that's what I love to coach.
Yeah. So what did you tell the woman that you had the call with before? And she was like, I'm just overwhelmed. And what was your
Oh, I
resolve
said,
for
well,
that?
the biggest thing I said was, we've got to get you exposed to it, because kind of like the rejection, that's the time you actually work on it. Is like, you can't just sit around not dating and expect
Mhm.
that to get better.
Yeah.
It's like, where that probably comes from is she's very likely had a history where she has in some way felt like she's letting a parent down or a sister down, and she's constantly considered others. So there'll be some level of minor to moderate trauma history there, where
Yeah.
she feels she has to be all for everyone and never disappoint a person.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way relationships work. Like,
Yeah.
she's gonna have to get comfortable disappointing people in her whole life. She needs to disappoint people at work when she wants to leave for a better job. She needs to disappoint men she doesn't want to date so she can meet men she does want to date. She's going to disappoint her partner when she doesn't want to do the thing that he wants her to do, because she just really doesn't
Hmm.
want to do it. So disappointing people is like a natural part of life. But as
Yeah.
kids, we're often conditioned to believe we should never disappoint someone. When we disappoint mummy and daddy, they don't love us anymore, and it feels really
Yeah.
gross and bad. And so now, to have a healthy relationship, she needs to be out there disappointing people, not intentionally because she's being a bitch, but just natural part of authenticity. Sometimes you disappoint people.
Yeah.
And so I need her out there facing that, disappointing a couple of people. And then once she has disappointed a guy, going internally and
Hmm.
reassuring, this is where we kind of go deep with the psychology and the coaching, but going internally deep and saying, hey, there's that part of you that
Hmm.
feels like she's going to be abandoned or is going to be completely unloved because she disappointed someone. And she's like a little part of you that's speaking up through you. So
Yeah.
now that you're older, you've got to be like a mother to her, and you've got to reassure
Mm.
her that she's still going to be loved even when she disappoints someone, that you're going to
Wow.
protect her from being abandoned even when she disappoints, even when you guys
Yeah.
might disappoint someone on the outside.
Yeah.
But you can't kind of solve all of that just by not dating. You kind of need to be exposed to it, and then the insecurity will pop up, and then we can practice handling it.
Mm. Ooh, you're pretty good at this coaching thing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
I
love
appreciate that.
it. That was a good answer. So, what do you think? And we've probably touched on it a little bit, but like, what is the most common mistake that women make in dating? And how can they pivot to improve their approach on that stuff? I know we touched on it a little bit, but is there more granular things?
The first answer, this isn't really the biggest, but the first answer is swiping hundreds of men. Just stop
Just
doing it.
go.
Please just stop swiping hundreds of
It's
men. Like,
habit though, too. Don't you think? A lot of times we're just like bored and you're
well,
just swiping to swipe.
I mean, yeah, but poker machines are habit, aren't they? But how much money? I think I used a poker machine once. I lost $20 and thought it was the
You're,
stupidest thing ever, and never
you're
did it again.
out.
But that poker machines, the first one is really fun.
Yeah.
Wow, am I going to win? The second one is like, wow, am I going to win? But slightly less enjoyable than the first.
Yeah.
By the 100th pull,
Yeah.
you are depressed. Okay.
Yeah.
So any dopamine driving activity is the same. Random sex, usually fun the first time. Second
Mm-hmm.
time, it's not quite as fun. The 100th time, you're like a depressed human.
Yeah.
Eating sugary foods, porn, gambling machines, poker machines, and dating apps. They all fall under
Mm.
the same category. They're dopamine buzzers. The first swipe is really fun. You're like, oh, who will I get? By the 100th swipe, you're depressed.
So true.
So you've got to really mitigate that habit. They're designed to be addictive. They're designed to do that. They're designed to keep you on them, because the app doesn't want you to go to a different app. And unfortunately, they're motivated to keep users on. The
Yeah.
best thing about apps is they have this incredible pool of people. And if we know that 8 out of 10 people are good people, then again, we've just got to figure out who's a good person. But the downside is they are built to ruin your brain. And if you
Yeah.
don't take proper precautions, not only will they ruin your brain, but they'll ruin your relationships with men, because naturally when you're on them, you just have to be superficial. It's the only way to not overwhelm your brain. And the
Yep.
more time you spend being superficial on the apps, the more you kind of become superficial,
Oh,
because you just become that, right? You're on there all day, every day,
yes.
and you just, the more you think something, the more you become that thought.
Yeah. But it's interesting
So,
because as soon as you go, I'm done with this. I'm not going to swipe anymore. And I'm like, I'm out for a little bit. Then somebody pops up that you're like, oh, I should just look at this one. And it lures you back in. But I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of what you're saying is it's kind of your algorithms are probably set that way. They sense you've maybe tapered back a little bit and now they're going to hit you with the zinger, I guess.
They could very well be. Yeah. I wouldn't put that past them at all. And the hard part is it's always, yeah, again, you spot the problems. It's so easy to go on to the next person because that person has a problem.
Yeah.
But so you think you got a good one, you got the zinger, and then it's the next person, next person. So just don't go on swipe hundreds of people. It's really, really bad for your brain. You wouldn't do it on a poker machine. Don't do it on a dating app.
Yeah.
There's better ways to do it. Like I teach what a lot of this is, slowing down, having boundaries with yourself, forcing it to be like a speed date. That's what I teach a lot of my clients.
What do you
But
mean
I'd say
forcing it to be like a speed date?
so you want to slow everything down. I mean, it's a whole strategy that I go into with my clients, but essentially we want to slow everything down.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make online dating as close to speed dating as I possibly can.
Mm.
Now, if you've had like a bad experience speed dating, think of it, okay, I want to make it as close to a social party with some guys at as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Now, a social party, what do you do there? You go there, there's a bunch of people, you meet probably like half the people throughout the night. Most of them you speak to for a few minutes, no matter how, like who they are, whenever you speak to them for a few minutes. And then there's a couple who you're attracted to that you spend more time talking with.
Mm.
So I have basically sort of a whole breakdown how to do this, and I jump on with clients every day because it's so not natural to how that brain wants to use the app.
Yeah.
But it's really slowing down and looking at the humanness of each person, choosing your favorite, having fun with it. And also, I think the other thing is acknowledging that you do have to spend a little bit of time on the apps. Now, I know that your listeners are probably like, no, I wasted so much time on those apps already. Like, I totally get it. My
Mm-hmm.
typical recommendation is about half an hour a day to
Yeah.
be consistent with it. But at the end of the day, that's less time than you exercise for.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot less time than you spend at work. So if you can't prioritize that much time, unless you're going out and meeting people and using time to meet people in person, it's like, is it really a priority in your life?
Yeah.
How can you say something's a priority when you don't even spend half an hour a day on it? It's just not. It shouldn't be more than that. And that's one of the big problems is women get sucked into spending 1 or 2 hours a day, which is like going to the gym for 3 or 4 hours and thinking you can maintain that. You can't.
Yeah.
But you need that little slow consistency each day. And if you can't prioritize that, it's like, it's
Are
not
you
really
really ready
that
for
important.
something? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I want to be fit, but I only have 15 minutes a day to go to the gym. It's like, who are you kidding? That's not how life works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say, actually, I would say the biggest mistake I really think is not using feminine energy and not being in their feelings.
Mm-hmm. Elaborate. This is for me
A
specifically.
a lot of women, almost all of my clients come telling me what type of man they want. And a big part of that is I want a man who's masculine. I want a man who leads. I want a man who's a protector, a provider. And I say, great, those are all pretty traditionally masculine traits.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, are you a traditionally feminine woman to attract that? And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think so. Meanwhile, they're working 2 jobs, starting a company,
Yeah.
earning very nicely for themselves so that they don't even need a provider technically.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm sensing a little bit of hypocrisy here.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're wanting a man who's that masculine, then a lot of that traditionally feminine stuff, which would technically match that, you're not doing.
Yeah.
But the good news is there's always one area where no matter what you do for a living or no matter how much your outward success is, there's always one area where men need femininity in their lives. And that's emotional breadth and wisdom.
Okay.
So if you're going into a dark room with a man or like a dark alley or somewhere physically scary, you expect that man to lead you through the room. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not exploring that. You're not checking out that space. You're going to get him to check every cupboard, every nook, every cranny. You want to feel safe. You're not going into
100%.
that dark place until he's let it. Exactly. So the opposite is true in the emotional realm. A man is not going to feel safe with you, as in emotionally safe, if you don't demonstrate you have the emotional breadth to maneuver around feelings, emotions, and vulnerability. He ain't going to go there until you set that space and make it safe. And this is where a lot of my corporate clients struggle, is because mostly in a corporate world, you don't really want to show a lot of vulnerability. It's
Yeah.
not in a business world. There's a time and a place where a woman's vulnerable energy can actually really help those environments. But a lot of traditionally masculine workplaces, that's not the energy you want to be in. So a lot of clients come to me and they're saying, Mark, I want a really masculine man, but most men I meet just seem to be intimidated by me. And I
Hmm.
say that's because over time you've had to narrow your emotional breadth and range to accommodate your working environment and to survive in these. Maybe it's a sales environment, maybe it's a CEO role, whatever is the official sort of corporate function they're in.
Hmm.
Vulnerability and emotional breadth has no place in those environments. And so a lot of these women come to me thinking that, oh, I'll just get a man who's just like me. But no, that's what his mates are for. That's
Yeah.
not the role he's going to choose for a woman in his life. The woman, he's choosing emotional breadth. So you don't have to be like a stay-at-home housewife. You don't have
Hmm.
to go being a traditional, and that's not going to be you, but you do have to have a significantly wider emotional breadth than he does, because
Hmm.
otherwise he's not going to feel safe with you. He's going to choose a woman with a wider emotional breadth, whether she's a housewife or not, whatever that.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't want that anyway, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is how emotionally wide and fluid is she,
Hmm.
because a man is not going to feel safe exploring the emotional area if you haven't explored it first for him.
So what are some things that you can do, just some easy things to start getting back into your own feminine energy if you're
Yeah,
very
so
masculine?
checking in a lot about how things make you feel.
Yeah.
That's a big one, and doing a journal on that each day. I have an exercise I give to clients. It's called How Do I Feel? I Feel. And basically, it's just repeating those two sentences over and over again for a few minutes at a time.
Hmm.
Closing your eyes and doing the exercise is really good as well. A lot of us distract ourselves using our eyes. We're very visual creatures, and we stay very busy with our eyes. So slowing down, noticing how you're feeling, and being
Hmm.
able to notice how it changes moment to moment. Another thing I'd say is be aware of the word like, because a lot of
Hmm.
women, when I ask them how they feel, they say, I feel like he doesn't care. Or
Hmm.
I feel like I'm not a priority to him. Mark, I really feel like he should be working harder on the relationship. That's how I feel. And actually, using the word like means you didn't use a feeling at all.
Oh,
The English language is funny that way. So if you put the word like after the word feel, you've just gone into thinking territory. Okay.
okay.
I feel like he should be I feel like he should be putting in more effort would really be, I feel worried.
Yeah.
That's what it would actually be. I feel like I'm not a priority to him would be, I feel scared or I feel concerned.
Yeah.
So you can see there's a level underneath where it
Yeah.
should be short and simple rather than explanative and long. And you'll know because the word like needs to go away if you
And
want
the
to.
like almost
Yeah.
makes it about him rather than yourself. Because when you change it, and you say, I feel worried, that's your true feeling there. But when you're saying, I feel like he isn't into me, that's more about him, right? So you're bringing it to
That's
be back about
true.
yourself.
That is true. You could say, for
Yeah.
example, I feel like I'm not doing a good job in the relationship.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
could make it about yourself and still use the thought, or I feel like I'm not good enough for him. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm putting in more effort. So you can still direct it inwards.
Yeah.
It's really, if you say, I feel like I'm not putting in enough effort, it's probably, I feel, what's underneath that? It'd be something
Uh,
like, I feel, you want to have a go?
um, yeah, I'm not good at this game. I feel like inadequate. Would that be a good one?
That's kind of one of those ones. It's closer. Yeah. It's probably something like, I feel small, or it's getting there. There's a deeper level there.
Yeah.
But that's the big piece. And it also applies in the positive,
Yeah.
because men need positive feedback. Men need appreciation. One of our sole purposes on this planet is to be useful to women.
Hmm.
And the way that we know if we are useful or not is her feelings. It's, does
Mm.
she share the way her feeling has been affected by our action? This can apply in the negative when we do something that hurts you and we get feedback
Yeah.
on how to treat you better. But the positive, just like training a dog, the positive should be four fifths of it. The
Yeah.
positive should be, hey, I feel so excited you're planning a date for us. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Or, hey, feels great that you want to give me a call. Felt great that you give me a call. Great's a bit of a lazy feeling world. Uh, felt appreciative you gave me a call,
Yeah.
or felt happy.
And
Jubilance
excited
probably a
and
little bit
yeah.
strong, excited. Yeah. Felt
Yeah. Flattered.
chuffed, flattered. Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. But we
So
tend to
getting
forget to do those things. Like we only think about you because you made a point there about we do it when something negative happens. We surely will step up and go, I feel like this because you did something bad. But we forget to do that when it's something positive, right? Just the little
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was working with a client the other day, and I often go on clients' profiles or have my own female profile on apps because I always want to know what's happening, keep my finger on the pulse there. And sometimes guys will do things where they behave well in one instance, but something that they do at the same time is not the behavior you want. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, let's say a guy, let's say he wants to call you, but he wants to call you now, which
Mm-hmm.
is not a time that you said. Maybe you said, "Hey, call me tonight," and he's like, "Oh, I'll just give you a call. I'll just give you a call now." So
Yeah.
the calling is a positive action because
Yeah.
that's a momentum forward action that we do want to train men in. The calling now is a negative action. And so often we jump to just focusing on, I don't want you to call me now, get out of
Mm-hmm.
here, as opposed to saying something like, "Hey, feels great that you want to call. Love a man that takes a lead. Um, feel a little worried or concerned about the timing that you didn't hear that. Would feel
Yeah.
a lot happier if you'd be open to sticking to the timing that we asked."
Yeah.
So it's a good example of he actually did do something right there,
Mm-hmm.
but often we forget to appreciate that he
Yeah.
was right.
No, I get that. Yeah, for sure. So, okay, I'm going to go a little bit off here.
Love it.
Have you seen, I just kind of want your opinion on this. A lot of those reality shows out there, like Love is Blind, Married at First Sight.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to go on Love is Blind in particular because it's just fascinating to me. We're all fascinated by the show in itself, right? It's like one of the number
Yeah.
one shows out there. And the majority of them, I mean, there are some that have worked out. They've,
Yeah.
ended up good.
Yeah.
But, how do you feel about like two people being in complete rooms where you cannot see each other? You don't know anything about them visually. And then all of a sudden you're getting married. I don't know. That's just whacked. But, but you come out, like, how do you feel about that whole process? Do you think that's like legit? Can that really happen? Is that I know it can happen, but is it
I mean, it's not
positive?
that different from talking to people online. You just haven't seen the photo first, right?
Yeah. But I think
But
about if I did an experiment and I just blindly swiped and then I start, oh, that's kind of cool. If I did an experiment where I blindly swipe on like 10 people and then I match with whatever those 10 are, and without looking at their pictures, I'm not allowed to look at their pictures, I start
yeah,
having conversations. I'm on to something here,
that's
Mark.
that's essentially the process that I'll do with clients, except
Yeah.
we do look, if I really want to like turn up the heat on them, I would
Yeah.
do it without letting them look at the photos. Um,
Yeah.
but I tend to use Tinder, which is always a shit show. I use Tinder because it's the hardest app, but
Okay.
you can have a lot of success on it. So I don't want clients to have any excuses. So I use Tinder because then they can't tell me, oh, my app doesn't work. Because if I can make Tinder work, then there's
You
no
make any
excuse on any
effort.
other app.
Yeah.
No, like I don't mind the concept. I love that it forces them to speak to each other without
Mm-hmm.
making preconceived judgments.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the value diminishes with how long they speak to each other for,
Mm.
um, because they don't get that real world exposure.
Yeah.
How few there actually are. Like ultimately, they only get like 15 people, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not a huge number. You probably get along with three of them, so you don't have a huge choice there. I like the general concept, but I guess the other big issue there is they leave them in there long enough to turn it into fantasy, which is
Yeah.
sad because the first part of the experiment I think is great. But again, you can never tell a couple until you put them under stress and duress. So
Yeah.
you have them in this perfect environment where they're getting fed, where they're falling in love, where everything is great, and like everyone wants to watch it because everyone loves the dopamine and like
Yes.
wonderful. But you can't tell the quality of connection again until you have conflict. And the good thing about like, for example, online dating or just starting out in real life, you have these little conflicts about like he wants to take you on a date that's halfway and you want him to come a little closer to your house, or
Yeah.
you want him to call I don't know, before the weekend and he's busy until the week. So you have all these little conflicts
Mm-hmm.
to work through. And that's lacking in a show like that. Like, where's the conflict? Where's the forced conflict of natural life? So you have
Mm-hmm.
this cool idea, which is great. We're talking to each other without making judgments. I'm all for
Yep.
that. But then you lack the natural conflict to stress test the couple. And that's why so many of them break because
Yeah.
they take away the conflict that would actually have tested whether or not these two just never should have been together after like one day of knowing each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
I like the idea. but
Yeah.
the execution is flawed if you're trying to create healthy couples, because healthy couples need conflict, and there's just
Yeah.
not enough.
Oh, I like that. So talking about things that, just to get your opinion on, what do you think about porn?
I think it's bad for the brain. I think it's
Yeah.
really bad for the brain. It depends on the relationship. I mean, some relationships are for it. I don't have it in mind personally, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't judge a relationship if it does have it. I think it's not a topic that I'm claim to be an expert in at all.
Yeah.
I do believe it harms intimacy more than it helps it. And like any addictive tendency, like dopamine, any dopamine feeder that we talked about,
Hmm.
if it's not something that's agreed upon by the couple, if it's not something that can be used casually very occasionally, if it's affecting the intimacy, and that tends to be what happens with any
Yeah.
dopamine driver, whether it's porn, gambling, sex with someone else,
Yeah.
sugary food, alcohol. If there's any dopamine driver, it's easy for that to become the priority over the person in the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's where addictive things get really dangerous. So I'm not like one of those people that says you couldn't ever have it in a
Yeah.
relationship, but I think it's like it's playing with
Sprinkle
fire a
it
little bit.
in. Yeah, I think so
It's
too. I think it's
if
like
people
it
want to
becomes a
use it,
drug.
it's fine, but it's very easy to get addicted to that stuff. And I think,
Yeah.
especially for men, it's worse on the male brain. So for that reason, I think it's bad. I
Yeah.
avoid it. It's just one of those things that's like you're really playing with fire.
And then
Um,
I think you also start to become a little bit delusional as to how you think things should be in the bedroom, right? And you start
Yeah,
to,
that's true.
it
I
gets a
kind
little
of
crazy
forgot
there.
that.
Yeah.
But it's so true. It's like, especially for young people, if you
Yeah.
think that women act like that, because porn is really the fantasy that women are turned on at a moment's notice and instantly want to bang you and know how to fuck and are just so
Yeah.
horny, and it's very unrealistic to life.
Yeah.
So certainly I know it can cause ED. I know it can cause impotence. It can
Ooh.
make your partner look nowhere near like as good because you're comparing
Yeah.
them to someone who's like been dressed up. But I've always
Yeah.
found it like very, very fake anyway. So um,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely has neurological consequences, and I don't think
Yeah.
it's overall good for intimacy. But I also know couples
Hmm.
who have engaged in it and in occasional ways and seem fine. So
Yeah. I think occasional once in a
it's
while just to spice things up, maybe,
right.
but not
I mean,
as like,
some couples swing and it works for them, right? So
yeah.
it's like you get your erotic kick somehow. It's just you
Yeah.
got to be real careful with anything that can be addictive. Really careful, especially porn. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
playing with fire, in my
I think so
opinion.
too. Yeah. So, okay, you've got this vast array of informative videos out on YouTube. We were talking about like so many cool ones. Everybody needs to go on and just look you up because you have tons of really fun ones. I started to look at a few and there were so many I didn't know which to do. But which one would you recommend is like an essential viewing for someone just looking to understand your approach and expertise? What would be one of the best ones to go to?
This isn't really answering the question, but I actually think my book is probably because the videos are all on specific topics and YouTube makes them have to be that way so that they
Mm-hmm.
can target the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Anything newer is obviously going to be my newer content, but my older content isn't bad. It's just a little more dating focused.
Okay.
Whereas now, as I've evolved, there's only so much I find dating content until I felt that I was repeating myself.
Yeah.
I do find the concepts get simpler as I go on, so I still make dating videos sometimes, but a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is like tried and true and evergreen. So my more recent stuff is going to be relationship-based content. So it depends on what stage of the journey the people are in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I always think books are kind of the best value thing in the world. You get
Mm-hmm.
a few hours of content, sometimes several hours, or you get the whole book for whatever it is, $30 or
Yeah.
$15, whatever it is. And I
Yeah.
think if you really want to understand like my whole philosophy from self-development through to meeting people, through to actually dating, and then through to building the start of the relationship, my book is kind of the best summary of that. So
Okay.
that's if someone really wants to learn about me, and
Yeah.
you can download a free first chapter from somewhere as well. There's a link somewhere where you can do that. But
Okay.
yeah, I'd
And
go
the
with the
book is
book.
called,
Book is called
tell
Make
us
Him
again.
Yours,
Hmm.
Beating the Odds of Modern Dating.
Ooh, I like it. Okay. So I am going to touch so on one video that I did see because it mentioned a
Please,
statistic, right? So I was
please.
like, whoa,
What did
what's
you
up with this?
pull?
Okay.
What have you pulled? Yeah.
It said 52% of adult women will be single and lonely
Yeah.
by 2030.
Yeah.
52%.
And that's one of those funny ones where it's like, well, so will 52% of men then.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
like, no one's going to
Yeah.
click on that, right? So I have to title my video women.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Question. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I just want to know what the fuck. That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, it makes me sad, honestly, and it's why I do a lot of
Yeah.
the work that I do, because society is becoming so much more individualistic.
Yeah.
There's so much more depression, loneliness, than there's kind of ever been, which is interesting because on paper we have fewer problems than we've ever had as a society.
Mm-hmm.
I know groceries are a bit more expensive now. It's hard to buy a house. There's a few things going on, but overall, if you look at things like crime, if you look at things like poverty, a lot of these statistics are improving, like
Mm-hmm.
general wellness. There's a lot of good things happening, and yet we all seem to be getting more lonely and more depressed, which
Yeah.
I think is interesting. That stat is multifactorial. I think there's a ton of contributing factors.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big one is that we're seeing a lot more women now go to college than men, which I think is
Mm.
really concerning, from a
Mm-hmm.
man's point of view. In some respects, I get it because many college degrees are so useless.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, college graduates still make a lot more than non-college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
That's yes, you get business owners who bump that rule. Of course,
Yeah.
most of the wealthiest people are not college grads, but
Mm-hmm.
that concerns me, especially for men's health, because women do okay-ish when they're lonely. They don't thrive,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all right.
Mm-hmm.
They have pretty good connections with their friends. They
Stay
they can form
busy.
emotional connections. It's not even staying busy. Sometimes staying busy is actually a distraction when it's
Mm-hmm.
hurting them more. What I more mean is that they're good at forming connections with other women in particular and just generally
Oh
being
yeah.
more connected. Men are bad at that, like
Yeah.
really bad. And so lonely women is bad, but lonely men is really bad. Lonely men is like wars. Lonely
Yeah.
men is like big movements, rebellions, violence.
Yeah.
And a simple example is whenever an elderly couple, when one member passes away, if the woman passes first, you probably know this, the man usually passes very
That's just
quickly
shortly
after
after.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas the women tend to live long on. There's so many studies from Japan of the longest living communities. They're all social. They're all,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the healthiest medicine you can take is having friends and connections. And women are just so much better at that than men.
Yeah.
So I think it's really concerning for men. We have all this encouragement for men not to go to college, which I get that there's some crappy college degrees out there, but we still need a lot of, male doctors, male lawyers, veterinarians, psychologists, engineers. And unfortunately, what happens with all the women going to college and earning in many cases more money, women then don't want to date someone they consider lesser earning or not as intelligent as them. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have more and more women who are kind of getting some connection needs met and men who are not. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have the men kind of going their own way and forming like little rebellion groups, which I just don't think is good for men
Yeah.
overall. And it is sad because, yeah, you get a lot of violence either towards themselves or towards others once men start getting lonely. Um, and I can empathize with women as well because women have kind of over the last 50 years learned to provide for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of men's big roles.
Yep.
And in some respects, they've learned to protect themselves. Not fully, obviously, but there is a level of there's a police force, there's locks on the door. So in some cases, a woman can hopefully mostly feel safe in her own home, without a man having to be physically present. So
Yeah.
women are still attracted to providing and protecting, especially, but they don't necessarily need it.
Right.
What really helps her needs get met is that emotional extra, that presence, that thing that comes on top, which traditionally was more of a feminine skill.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a hard message to swing to men, which is like, you still need to be a strong provider and protector, even if she doesn't need you to provide. To attract a woman, she's not going to go with a little sissy that runs away from problems in his life. So it's like, you still need to be a protector, but you also have to have a level of emotional intelligence, not so much that she thinks you're gay and feminine,
Yeah.
but
We do
enough
have a
that she
lot.
doesn't want to leave you later. And men are like, how the
Oh,
frick do I do
what do we do? We
that?
do have a lot of
Um,
rules.
and it's like women have kind of done the opposite because women have managed to, in a lot of ways, still be women, but they've got careers, they're balancing a job. I
Yeah.
mean, motherhood and career, like at the same time, was never done before. So women have had this enormous challenge, but have kind of cracked it.
Yeah.
And the equivalent challenge for men is kind of 50 years behind, which is like, how do we keep men masculine, strong, competitive, keep all those amazing masculine, protective, all those amazing, strong masculine traits that women need.
Mm-hmm.
Because who are the predators? Usually
Mm-hmm.
men.
Mm-hmm.
So we need strong men to protect from predators in the community. We need good, strong, tough men who are decisive, who are powerful, who are protectors. But then men also have to have a little emotional intelligence and but not
Yeah.
so much that women think they're gay
Yeah.
or
It's a
feminine.
fine line here.
It really is. And like
Yeah.
women have kind of mostly figured out that fine line. I think in some cases with a lot of my clients, women have overcorrected and there's
Yeah.
too much masculine there. They use their job to try to prove themselves. And like men don't really care about that. Men think it's cool that you have a job.
Yeah.
Men like that you have something outside of them, but they don't really care about like how much money you make that much or any of that stuff. Not good masculine men anyway.
Yeah. No.
Narcissists that want to use you might care about how much money you make, but you don't want those.
No.
So it's like women have overcorrected a little bit. And I think one of the things I do in coaching is kind of bring women back to that, like, okay, let's keep those protective providing traits you've got for yourself while
Mm-hmm.
also getting into your feminine around men. For men, it's like, let's keep those protective masculine traits while also having a level of emotional intelligence where you can speak to a feeling sometimes, where you can
Mm.
relate to her, where you can just be present with her because she doesn't need your money anymore. What's
Yeah.
going to keep her around is if you can actually sit and have a half an hour quality time with her a day or
It's
an hour or
huge.
whatever it is. So it's tricky because you don't want to go too far as a man where she loses respect for you because you're
Yeah.
showing your emotions, but you don't want her to leave you either. Women initiate divorce almost 80% of the time. So you don't
Ooh.
want her to leave you because you're unemotional, cold, and not present. So
Yeah. So you
it's
gotta
hard for
find
men,
that
but it's
happy
been hard
medium.
for yeah, it's been hard for women for a long time. So I think men are kind of struggling to find that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some kind of extreme voices that are not necessarily helping that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's I really hope we can help men with that because for men's mental health and society's overall health, I think it's really bad to have so many men without women in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we can help with that somehow. I don't know.
I hope so.
I
And
like
again,
to
the
think
apps
so.
don't help because the apps kind of encourage women who generally have more of the options to be more picky. And that pickiness
Yeah.
means they don't get to know the good guy who's a 7 out of 10 that they might have met
Mm-hmm.
at a party, but now they swipe past him online. So I think the apps have a lot to blame there. And so part of my
Yeah.
mission is kind of bringing men and women back together by seeing the human side and
Oh, I like it.
having women still be feminine, men still be masculine, but with that tie in the middle.
Yeah, I like that. That's super important. Huh.
Okay.
This is all such great information. So if I was just going to ask you to sum it up, like, what would you say would be like the top three things that a woman can do to ensure she kind of finds a healthy relationship? Can you just give me three little tips for them?
Ooh. I would say invest in men who invest in you.
Oh, I like that.
Make that, yeah, that was early in my book. Make that one of your number one standards, and how
Yeah.
you measure your attraction is like, is he investing in me or not? And respond with your attraction relative to his investment.
Oh, I like it. Yeah.
So invest in men who invest in you. Judge character over chemistry
Mm.
would be a second.
Okay. Very
Um,
good.
and don't use the apps unless you have a very specific plan of how to counter the downsides, how to
Okay.
counter the superficialness, the overwhelm. Unless you have a plan you can stick to,
Yeah.
meet men out of the house and put your time towards that. Apps can work,
Yeah.
but they can also leave you hating men and being superficial. So
Sure.
stay off the apps unless you've got a very specific plan on how to address the mismatch between the way the app is designed and the way your brain works.
Yeah, which I think is something they can do. Somebody new going on to an app can really take the time to kind of come up with a plan before you even dive into it. And
Yeah, I make all
you
my
know,
clients take 1 to 2 months off apps as soon as I meet them because I know they're coming to me because they've
yeah,
been in pain, they've been burned. So I don't want them jumping straight back on because then I'm just exposing the same neural circuits. They're
yeah,
just going to get
yeah,
burned again, do the same thing. I need a whole reset, time off, whole new tenants, whole new
yep.
use policy, whole new boundaries, and usually a whole new app so that I can refresh them.
Oh, I love it.
So very important that you just don't keep burning yourself over and over again. Have an actual strategy that mitigates that
Yeah,
gap between your brain and the app.
great advice. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining me today. This was so much good information. I kind
That
of
was
just
so
kept going.
fun. Thank you for having me.
I just want to keep asking more and
I
more.
feel like
It's
I
so
talked the whole time, maybe
fascinating.
didn't give you enough
No,
airtime there.
that's
So
why I have you. No, you are here to give us your expert advice and thoughts because it's just so helpful to everybody. And I hope that the listeners are getting that from everybody that I'm bringing on it because I really want people to, there's so many different ways I think to look at things. And I find myself, I have a lot of relationship coaches coming on, different people, and I feel pulled and like I'm like, oh, he said this, oh, but he said this over here.
yeah,
So I
I
just
get it.
want, the listeners to resonate with a certain person, which is why I'm trying to, have them listen to a lot of people and take from it what works for them, because what works for one person may not work for the other, right? So you got
Of
to kind of
course.
take what works for you. And you gave so much great info. So tell everybody where they can find like all of your good stuff that you have,
Yeah,
your handles.
you can check out my book, which is on Amazon or Audible. If you
Okay.
like the Aussie accent, you can listen to it for close to 8 hours actually on
Who
Audible.
doesn't like
So
an Aussie
who doesn't
accent?
love
I
an Aussie
mean, come
accent?
on.
Mine's not that strong. I can put it on strong. It's g'day, mate. Great to
Oh,
meet you.
yeah.
I can put it on a little stronger than my typical accent.
I love
Uh,
that.
Yeah, so I'd say the book is the biggest thing.
Uh-huh.
I also have a website, which is makehimyours.com.au. And I
Okay.
also have my Queen's Club, which is basically a little community place where every weekend I usually make a course available for free from basically Friday night to Sunday night, and
Oh,
then
that's great.
kind of take it away again so that people actually use it. So that community is free and you can join if you head to school.com. That's SKOOL.com/Q Club. That's Q for Quincy Club. Q for
Queen.
Queen. Yeah, yeah. School.com/Q Club. Yeah, I pop a course in there every weekend for 48 hours. So if you
Oh,
want
I
to do some
love
work,
that.
if you have a quiet weekend, drop into there. I'm usually in the community posting occasionally as well.
I want to
Yeah,
do
you can
it.
find
I'm
out
going to
more
go do
there.
it. I'm going
Yeah,
to do a
jump
little free
in.
course.
We'll have you.
Ah,
That sounds
I'm
fun.
going to go incognito. Okay. So before we end, I love to do a little from Mrs. to Ms. Fun fact, this or that. It's just a little
Okay.
relationship driven questions. So I got 10 questions. Just want you to tell me
Oh,
whichever one you would prefer. Nothing
okay.
crazy.
All right.
I
Let's
try
do
to
it.
make them tougher based on who it is. But number one, would you rather have an adventurous date exploring a new city together or a cozy night in with a homemade dinner and a movie?
Adventurous date, no question.
Oh, you were one of the first ones to say that. Everybody's like night in.
Really?
I'm like
No
you, like,
question.
let's go out and do something
My
fun.
favorite date was usually one of my favorites. I always love exploring dates because
Yeah.
they create movement. There's lots to do on them, and I used to love going to universities. This is when I was a little bit younger, obviously in my
Wow.
20s, but I just love the energy there. Universities, you wander into a biology lecture or a carpeting lecture or something.
Wow.
You're like,
Yeah.
hey, this is good. Spend 10 minutes in there. It's just a great little story. The energy's great.
That's
Exploring
cool.
all day. Yeah, for
I've never
sure.
done that. All right, number two, a bath for two or shower escapades?
Ooh. I'm going to say a bath for two.
Yeah.
Shower escapades are always, they always seem good in theory and they just never work out as well as you hope they will.
It's
So
kind of like threesomes.
I'm gonna go. This is like way more awkward than I thought it would be. Damn it.
Exactly. Kind
Unless
of
you're
like
lucky, if you have
threesomes.
one of those showers, which I think I've had it like once in a hotel, which has two things,
Two, yeah.
then I'd probably take the showers. But otherwise, yeah, I'll go to bath.
Yeah, I think a good bubble bath, some candles, kind of like spooning a little. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, the bath is
Then,
good.
yeah. Number three, would you rather date someone who shares all your hobbies and interests, but has different values, or someone with similar values, but few shared interests?
I mean, I have to say values because I just know that interests don't make you compatible. Values do.
Yep. Yep. That goes back to
Plus,
what you
other
said.
people having different interests makes them really engaging and interesting.
Yeah, I
So
think so too. Not so much
values all the
that
way.
is it they say, oh yeah, opposites attract, right? So
Right,
that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
right.
Number four, spontaneous makeout sessions or planned candlelight dinners.
Spontaneous makeout
I knew you were
sessions.
going to say
For sure.
that.
Yeah,
Number
for
five,
sure.
for
These are
sure.
fun. I like these.
Number five, would you rather have an unforgettable first date, but no second date, or just a mediocre first date, but that leads to a long-term relationship?
The latter. I was about to say maybe if I was younger, the first date would be fun,
Yeah.
but who likes really getting go up and crushing down on,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think, yeah, because
the
that's
latter.
really disappointing then when you go out on a date and it's fabulous and then you don't hear from them again. That
And you're
sucks.
like, oh, did I misread the whole situation? Am
Yeah.
I delusional? Like, did I dream that whole thing? Yeah, the second
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Number 6, blindfolded surprises or playful role play.
Oh, that's the hardest one so far. Playful role play.
Playful role play. Have you done this? Can I ask? Are you a
Yeah,
role player?
yeah, I've done this.
Oh, oh wait,
They're
you're
fun.
Jon Snow.
I've done
Jon
Jon
fucking
Snow.
Snow. That's
They're fun.
yeah.
I can act reasonably well, as in I can sort of stay in character
Yeah.
in what others might consider to be relatively awkward situations. So
Yeah.
I'll start a fight at Costco about Sam being an alcoholic. And I'll just stay in character. I'll be like,
No.
babe, like all this alcohol isn't gonna solve our relationship issues. Like, I know it makes us within earshot of as many people as possible, and I'll just stay in character. She gets so embarrassed. So
She
yeah, I
does.
like role
She
play.
doesn't play
Yeah.
along with you, or she
She's
gets
not very
like,
good at playing
shut
along, sadly. Yeah. I wish she was
up.
actually, that is one thing I'm like, if I could like turn Sam into the perfect woman, I'd be like, she'd be better at role plays with
Wouldn't
me.
that
That's
be great if
things
she was
you'd
like,
change
but I
about your
want
partner.
it. I just
That
want
would
the
be on the
alcohol,
list.
right? Leave me
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. I would find that so fun. I did this with a friend actually. We got into a whole fight about how I'd cheated on her. No, sorry, she cheated on me and I'd walked into her office while she was cheating on me. And the
Uh-huh.
looks she was getting from people walking past who overheard were just
Oh my
made my
God.
day. It's
He had
so
air
fun.
quotes on that, by the way, folks. He didn't really
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Clean that up. All right, number 7. Would you rather, oh, this is a good one. This is probably my favorite one. Would you rather have the ability to read your partner's mind during sex or be able to control their sensations with just a touch?
Definitely the second. Control
Oh,
sensations. Yeah. Reading partner's mind, I would never want that burden. There's so
can
many
you
things that go through
imagine?
your mind that I don't want to know. It's like the number of filters that like, what was that thought? What
I,
the? I'm
yeah, we
really
got
glad that I
enough
signed
going
up
on
not
up
to say
there.
that. Yeah. No, I don't want the burden of knowing what's
No,
going on in their mind. No way.
no, you're
The
right.
touch thing would be cool.
It would be cool. Okay, number 8, trying new positions or mastering the old ones.
Uh, I'm going to say trying new positions.
Okay, I like that. That's good. I like new stuff. Number 9, slow dancing in the living room or spontaneous dance moves in the kitchen.
Spontaneous dancers in the kitchen,
That's good.
for sure.
Now, and number 10, tease to build anticipation or straight for the fireworks.
I actually like the teasing. Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoy the teasing to build anticipation. Yeah.
Foreplay is where it's at. Like you can
Yeah.
get so much connection during that time. I think that's really, really cool.
This is probably a little TMI, but I think sex sometimes when neither of you finishes is actually is fun, is like a good goal.
Because of that anticipation that's built
Yeah,
up.
because then like the rest of the day, I'm like, I just want her, and it's also like
Yeah.
you going back throughout the day and you're trying to peel away the energy. If you finish,
Yeah.
it's kind of like takes the energy away for X amount of time, 24 hours, whatever it is. But if you
Yeah.
don't, it's like you stay horny for your partner for hours on end, sometimes days on end if you don't
Yeah.
finish. So I think that like getting your partner close and then just not going any further. Like, nope, you
The,
can't come. Nope,
yep. The
not today.
tease.
Nope, we're stopping now. We're
I
going
think
like
that's hot. That is good. That's not TMI. That is good
that's
info
good
right
stuff.
there. That's the
Good.
good stuff.
All right, I like it. I'm glad.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Mark. This has been so fun. You've got so much great information out there. I really want everybody to go on and check out your stuff on your website, find your book, and go check out that free little course because those are the things that's going to help you progress in each of your own relationships every time, right? So very, very cool. Well, thank you once again. And thank you everybody for listening. You can find me on any major streaming platform. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe, please. That really helps. And you can find all of these videos are up on YouTube. So go check them out. And you guys have an amazing week. Talk to you soon. Bye.